Ladies and gentlemen, it's a fight that we never would have seen coming in 2020. In one corner, standing 6 foot 3 inches and weighing in at 140 pounds, hailing from Varna, Bulgaria, the CEO of Robinhood, who touts his company as the best way to democratize finance for the everyman. It is the one, the only, the big, bad Vlad Tenev. In the other corner, at 1,312 feet and 2 inches long, tipping the scales at 266,000 tons, it is the container ship that treated the Suez Canal like the parallel parking portion of the driver's ed exam. Hailing from Taoyuan City, Taiwan, we have the ever gonna give you up, ever gonna let you down, the Ever Given! Both of these titans of industry made headlines in 2021 for blocking trade. So who came out on top? Was it Big Bad Vlad, the man who was at best forced and at worst colluded with Citadel Securities to block millions of traders from the buy side of their short squeeze? Or was it one sideways boy? Tonight, we will find out who is the Baron of Blockades, the Emperor of Embargoes, the King of Constipation. Let's get ready to inhibit trade! I'm sure you know about the GameStop short squeeze because everybody was talking about it, but here's the short version of it if you need a refresher. What was happening was that retail traders, mostly organized by the subreddit Wall Street Bets, banded together to buy and hold shares of GameStop in order to force GameStop's short sellers into a squeeze. As Wall Street Bets drove the price up, the short sellers would be forced to buy shares to cover their potentially infinite losses, which, as seen with Volkswagen in 2008, can result in a tremendous explosion of a stock's price. After months of posting about it, buying and holding GameStop shares, finally Wall Street Bets' vision came to a head in late January when shares of GameStop went from trading around $20 to an all-time high close of $347 on January 27th. And on January 28th, the sky was the limit. The market opened and the diamond hands piled in. During the trading day, GameStop traded at a high of $483, and then the unthinkable happened. Robinhood shut down the buy side of the trade. Literally, the app wouldn't let people purchase shares of GameStop. If you owned shares, you could sell, but you weren't allowed to buy. Without the buy side of the trade to force the short squeeze, the price of the stock fell to $193 at the close. The intervention of a stock brokerage to this extent in a short squeeze is something that had never before happened. The backlash was huge and bipartisan. Politicians from both sides of the aisle cried out that it was unfair for Robinhood to freeze out retail investors while hedge funds were still able to trade freely. Vlad went on a big PR tour doing damage control. Initially, he said some things that were a bit implicating, like Robinhood had to shut down the trade because they didn't have enough liquidity to cover the margin purchases, which is a very bad thing to admit if you're a brokerage. And then after a few days, Robinhood started changing the message to focus on T+2, which is the industry standard of taking 2 trading days as a settlement period after each trade. The reason why Vlad shut the trade down is murky. Robinhood uses Citadel Securities, the largest market maker in the world, and it's possible that Citadel recommended the move. Citadel's sister company, the hedge fund Citadel LLC, owns Melvin Capital Management, one of the GameStop short sellers that was very close to shutting down as a result of the squeeze. Supposedly, there's a firewall between Citadel LLC and Citadel Securities, and one hand doesn't know what the other is doing, but interests can align coincidentally. To be perfectly transparent, Vlad himself tweeted that the decision was not made on the direction of any market maker, but I think it's entirely possible that Robinhood's best interests and their market maker's best interests happen to align in this situation. It's food for thought. So when we try to put a dollar value on how much trade Vlad stopped, it's hard to put a really fine point on it because the amount could truly be infinite. It was an incredibly hyped short squeeze, and GameStop stock was trading at all-time high volumes. Before late January, GameStop stock traded at an average volume of 9 million shares per day. And then in the height of the frenzy, we got volumes like 197 million shares. So it is possible that on the day the squeeze was set to be squoze, an all-time high volume would have been set. And I think that's fair to estimate, considering that the squeeze is caused by buyers buying and short sellers buying as well. It's a function of high volume. So if we give GameStop an estimated unprecedented volume of 250 million shares at the day's high of $483 for January 28th, that gives us a trade value of $120 billion on the day. Less the trades that actually made it through that day on Robinhood and other brokerages, as there was a recorded volume of 58 million shares. That gives us an estimated $92 billion of potential trade frozen for that day. This obviously is a huge number on its own, but it's an incredibly huge number when you take into consideration that today, the total dollar volume of all US equities markets was $540 billion for the day. Vlad potentially blocked 17% of all equities trading for that day. Slam dunk! Personal finance has been democratized. So let's take that completely unscientific estimate of $92 billion and compare it to the other big trade blockade this year, the Suez Canal obstruction. It sounds like a movie The Rock would star in. Where this differs from the Robinhood example is that global trade is more predictable than the stock market. We know that on average, the Suez Canal handles $9.6 billion of trade per day. The ship was stuck for 6 days and 7 hours, and the canal took an additional 4 hours to reopen after it was freed, so we'll call that 6.5 days. And when you apply the rate of $9.6 billion a day, that works out to about $62.4 billion. So our findings are that Vlad beat the sideways boat in the Suez Canal. And when you think about this, it's actually fascinating. I mean, when I first thought of the concept for this video, I kind of brushed it off because I figured there was no way that Robinhood freezing GameStop trading would ever come remotely close to the week-long shutdown of a canal that handles 10% of global trade. The whole time I was researching the video, I was wondering how much Ever Given would beat Vlad by, but I was wrong. It's a fascinating analysis to pose these two against each other. One is a physical blockade, and the other is a digital or paper blockade, but I think if anything, this shows us exactly how good the stock market is at moving capital around. Remember, $540 billion of volume traded hands today alone. That's $136 trillion annually. And if you can halt a little segment of that, you will still be putting up massive numbers. It's mind-blowing. Before people come after me in the comments, obviously all of the numbers we used when developing Robinhood's Damage are hypothetical, unfortunately. It's the nature of this thought experiment. We can't really put an accurate quantity on something that was prohibited from happening, and ideally would have been happening in a completely unencumbered fashion. But let's reverse engineer it a bit. Knowing how much trade Ever Given blocked, a total of $62.4 billion, we can see how many hypothetical shares Vlad would have needed to block in order to at least equal the Ever Given, if not beat it. Assuming the day's high of $483, which really could be low because we'll never know how high the squeeze could have spiked, we find out that Vlad equals the Ever Given if he blocked 129 million shares, which based on previous trade volumes, I think is entirely within the realm of possibility. Previous highs flirted with 200 million shares, and only 58 million made it through on the stock's potentially highest trading day ever. So I think it's pretty safe to estimate that Vlad did at least around as much damage as the Ever Given, if not a little bit more. Again, it's an incredible testament to the amount of capital that flows back and forth through the stock market daily. A boat larger than the Empire State Building is a drop in the bucket by comparison. And now the aftermath of these trade blockades are still working themselves out. Vlad was interviewed by a House committee and he did a really good job of not really saying anything incriminating, but I think the decision did make an indelible mark on Robinhood's previously pretty good PR. And the Ever Given is being impounded by Egypt for a $900 million compensation bill. But one thing is for sure, it's a battle of the titans that we won't soon forget. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe. If you really enjoyed it, please share the video with a friend. I spend a bunch of time researching, writing, and editing each of my videos, and it really helps the channel grow if you can share it around. What do you think of Big Bad Vlad and the Ever Gonna Give You Up? Let me know in the comments down below. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Ross_Campoli, and definitely do click the subscribe button here so you won't miss out on any of my future videos about business, money, and influence. Thank you so much for watching. I really, truly appreciate your time spent watching my videos. And as always, I will see you in the next one.